And just like that, with the click of a button, we're live. Everyone, thank you for taking the time to be here today. We at 1047 really appreciate it, and we're looking forward to talking with you all a bit more about Splitgate 2, diving a bit more into the alpha, feedback, things of the sort. This is our first Splitstream, not to be confused with the Splitstream power weapon in Splitgate 2. We're going to be doing a few of these over the next couple of weeks or months. So today, we're going to be focusing on game design, so really looking forward to that. I'm Jesse Griefenberg. I'm an associate producer here at 1047, and I am here with Ian Proulx, the co-founder and CEO of 1047, and Darek Jones, our game designer. Guys, if you want to do just a quick introduction, and we can go ahead and dive right into it.
Darek, you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Darek, or a lot of people know me as a Kuvo. I've got a Halloween costume on right now. I'm more of a cactus without this on, but yeah, I've been here for about 4.5 years. Started as somebody in the community, and still kind of love the coming from that background. Love interacting with the community, hearing from you guys, and want to make a game you guys love. So looking forward to talking game design and then hearing you guys' questions, and yeah.
Yeah, and I'll just add, both Jesse and Darek are both former members of the community. We love hiring out of the community, so super pumped to be working with them and maybe more people in the future. But I'm Ian Proulx. I'm CEO and co-founder. A lot of you guys know me as Cardinal Soldier. Been working on this game for a very long time. Had the idea for Splitgate actually back in high school, 12 plus years ago. After playing Portal 2, just absolutely fell in love with the concept. And obviously I'm a big Halo guy, so you'll see a lot of inspiration from the Halo games, the older ones especially. But yeah, started in the dorm room at Stanford, built a prototype. Obviously it's evolved into a lot more than just that kind of initial idea, but excited to be chatting today, and excited to also just be chatting with the community more often. I think one of the things, we're not just talking about like feedback that we've made today, but also just a big focus of our of the feedback we've gotten and that we've kind of been focusing on internally is we want to talk to the community more often. That's why we did the external playtest. We're going to be doing a lot more of that. Getting back to kind of our roots of how we did things with Splitgate 1, where a lot of just community first mentality, getting feedback all the time. That's how we make a great game. So excited to be chatting today.
Awesome. Thanks to you both. So we're probably going to go ahead and dive right in on more of a broad vision of Splitgate 2. As you all know, we had our first alpha a couple of months ago, so we've taken a lot of time to, absorb that feedback and reiterate some changes. So I guess, first question for you two, what sort of takeaways did you get from the alpha? Were we pleased with the results? Did we receive great feedback? What were your thoughts on the alpha?
I mean, I was quite happy with the alpha. I mean, I think kind of the purpose of the alpha, which maybe was a little confusing, because I think it kind of, we went into it with a number of purposes. And so it was kind of unclear, is this a marketing thing? Is this a feedback thing? What is this? Is it a community thing? Ultimately, like the way we view alphas and why we're doing these external tests now is like, it's really a feedback thing for us. It's not meant to be some big marketing beat. And so like the way I looked at the alpha is it sort of validated what is going well, and it kind of gave us the feedback and direction we needed on where do we go from here. And so a lot of the changes we're making, which we'll be diving into in a bit, but a lot of these changes are, I mean, really all of these changes are stemmed from the alpha feedback of, hey, we want a slightly longer time to kill. We heard that a lot. We want more portal walls. Heard that a lot already. That's the first thing we did after the alpha, is like schedule a call, talk about it. What are we hearing? What are we seeing? What are the changes we want to make? And how do we act fast on this?
Yeah, and just to add to that, I think something that, again, wasn't probably super clear is like, with this being something that we're doing with the primary goal being getting feedback and iterating, a lot of the, if we were kind of 50-50 on a decision, we always favored like, let's do the thing that is a bigger change and might be more controversial, and then let's get feedback on that. Yeah. And then do whatever we end up thinking is better. So like time to kill, I think, is a great example where, we have these two options for time to kill. It's like, should we do slightly longer or slightly shorter? And then we figured, closer to original Splitgate is going to be less drastic change, less controversial. So I'd rather do something that's a bigger change, is going to get more feedback, see what people think, and then that's what we did. Heard a lot of feedback that we wanted the time to kill longer, and then that kind of decision is empowered by getting feedback from the community.
Totally. And I mean, in retrospect, we probably shouldn't have led with this. I probably would have done it a little bit differently, but I think to Derek's point, like kind of the mindset going into this is like, let's put our controversial changes forward, because that's the thing we want feedback on, right? Shared progression in hot zone. Like we knew going into it, this is going to be a love-hate kind of thing. We ended up changing it, because we saw some people like it, and kind of the intention of it originally was we like those epic moments, right? You're fighting over the hill. We think we're gonna get it, and then all of a sudden, last second, somebody swoops in and steals it. That's kind of cool, but it's also kind of annoying, right? And we sort of knew that, but we figured let's put this to the test and get feedback, because we don't really need to test, I don't know, something like domination, right? 3 hills. It's been done in video games and shooters forever. You kind of know it works. So we weren't really looking for feedback on that. We were looking for feedback on the things that we don't know if they work.
Yep.
Awesome. I think that's a really good, insightful discussion for certain feedback. Moving on to like the broader vision of Splitgate 2. A lot of people have mentioned that it's certainly much different than the first Splitgate, whether it's Splitgate 1 or Splitgate, who knows. But with Splitgate, we've introduced factions, weapons, attachments, that sort of thing. If you are a Sabrask fan, I'm repping the shirt. So Sabrask Love in the chat, please. I wanted to talk a bit about the faction system and why we went that direction. Obviously it adds a lot more to the game. So kind of wanted to get your thoughts on the faction system and abilities.
Totally. So I'd say kind of the whole approach with Splitgate 2 at a very high level started with what are the things we love about Splitgate? What are the things that the fans love about Splitgate and the community loves? And what are the things that we think kept it from breaking through, right? Because obviously we all know, very fun game. I mean, still my second favorite game to this day, right behind Splitgate 2. But, a lot of things we did well that put us on the map. But obviously Splitgate 1 wasn't able to sustain kind of that momentum that we were hoping it would. And so Splitgate 2 started off as just a very simple idea of like, what do we want to keep doing that people like? What are the things where we fell short that we want to improve on? And so very quickly with that mindset, we talked about meaningful variety with a purpose. That was a big theme of ours with building Splitgate 2 is like, how do we add more variety? Because the pattern we would see is people would come in, they'd have a ton of fun for about 3 or 4 weeks, and then they would run out of things to do. Similarly, live ops, having kind of a really solid content plan post-launch. We didn't really have that in Splitgate. It kind of took us 7 months to ship a new map and a new season. And so a big theme, which we haven't really talked too much about yet, but you'll get to see, obviously, once we do launch the game next year, is just how awesome our live ops and content plan is. There's going to be a hell of a lot more new things coming, new maps, modes, etc. That are going to keep the game fresh. And so I think with those two kind of mindsets and a bunch of other things, raising the bar to AAA quality, better progression, more social, more teamwork. There's a lot of different things that went into Splitgate 2, but kind of the original vision was let's lean into what we do better than anyone else that we love about Splitgate that makes it special, which is amazing gunplay, awesome movement, and highlight-inducing portal mechanics, right? Those are the 3 things we need to preserve. And also just that fun vibe where we're not afraid to be a little bit goofy, which we got more of that coming, don't worry. But and then let's build on that, right? If we're going to take that formula and preserve those 3 things that make us unique, how do we improve that? How do we add more variety? How do we have more content? How do we make it more social, right? Those are kind of the things that we wanted to build on top. And so, if I talk about factions and weapons, etc., this is meant to be that 10% icing on the cake, right? Like my vision, our vision is not to be some sort of ability hero shooter or anything like that. It's meant to be a game that's all about guns and portals, but that extra 10% could be the difference between winning and losing a gunfight. But really 90% is who's got the better aim, who's got the better mechanics, who's got the better portals. That's what we want this game to be about, just like Splitgate 1, just with that extra little bit on top.
Yeah. I think the other thing I'll add to that, I think you pretty much touched on everything as far as inspiration. The one thing I'll touch on is we talk about meaningful variety with a purpose. And I think that we've seen some of that. Like, I think there is more variety in like being able to choose what weapon you start with or being able to choose a faction. And I think we really like that. The other thing I'll add though, and we obviously can't talk about this too much, but there's a lot of that meaningful variety with a purpose that we haven't shown
Has
yet.
not
That's
been.
still
Yeah.
coming. Yeah.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah. We've shown 1.5 modes, right? We've shown TDM and we've shown Hot Zone. We got a lot of different, and I wouldn't say that those modes are highlighting meaningful variety and a purpose, to your point, right? That is a hill mode that we really like, that we think does a lot of things very well. And it's a slightly different flavor of team deathmatch where, okay, it's round based, whatever. There's things we like about that, but to your point, I'd say Splitgate 1, we had 20 different flavors of the same thing with our modes. I mean, I think Takedown was awesome, but you think about Koth, Dom, TDM, Shoddy Snipes. All these modes are kind of the same pacing, same maps, same, kind of different flavor, the same thing, right? And so I
Yep.
think what you'll see in the future is a lot of big variety. So
Yeah. Like I think we've thrown around the number 10% for what we've shown so far. I think that's approximately right of like there's a lot of stuff that we haven't shown yet that we're really excited about. Again, we can't talk about it too much, but just to really highlight that like when we say meaningful variety with purpose, like that's not something we've shown yet, but it's something we take really seriously.
yeah, good point.
Yeah, well said. You guys talked a little bit about Team Deathmatch. I'm going to jump in on a bounce-off question of this. We got a lot of feedback on Team Deathmatch for our first alpha. A lot of them mixed reactions in regards to the round mode specifically and whether or not the rounds felt too short or too fast. Looking to see, with that feedback that we've implemented, hoping we can go ahead and let the community know what changes have been made, because we do hear you.
Yeah, totally. I mean, so the biggest thing for both of our round-based modes is longer rounds, right? We want you to be able to get into that flow state. So, the kill cap in TDM went from 15 to 20, so pretty substantial increase in time to win a round. We got mixed feedback, I'll say candidly, on if people like round-based TDM. I think we actually saw a little bit more positive than negative. A lot of people, it was kind of different, right? But I think to me, sort of the original inspiration, I'm a huge Gears of War fan. And I recently replayed Gears 1, 2, and 3 and beat all their campaigns in prep for E-Day, which has me pretty hyped. But I was playing Gears of War 3's TDM, and I actually think it's a really, really fun system. One of our goals with game modes in particular was more epic moments. And the thing we really like about round-based is you kind of have an epic moment every single round. Even in the external playtest we did last Saturday, having that 19 to 19, who's going to win the point, very high stakes. You could lose, and now, oh shit, we're down. But hey, let's reset. We get a power weapon, maybe we win round 2. So that's kind of the motivation there, and we've seen mixed feedback, candidly. But I will say we've seen more good than bad, and so we're still continuing to keep an eye on it. But definitely, the one thing we for sure saw was a want for longer rounds, and so we've addressed that, and we're going to keep an eye on it.
Yeah, and I'll say like, we do a lot of testing internally and getting feedback both from internal people and external people when we're making changes like this. So like the first thing that we did when we heard the feedback about TDM rounds being too short is like, all right, let's make them longer. And I think we immediately went to 25 internally, where it's like, all right, let's test a lot longer rounds. We do that, got a lot of feedback about, yeah, this is longer and I like it, but it's a little bit too long. And then, kind of meet in that middle where it's like, all right, where's this sweet spot? And
Yeah.
I think, now that we're playing with 20, we've seen a lot of positivity around that change. People thinking that that's feeling really good. So excited to get more people to play with it.
Yeah, and I'll add to that, my kind of our philosophy when it comes to design, art, really everything is we like to make big changes and then dial it back. I think it's really easy to get into this mindset of just like increasing 10%, 10%, 10%, 10%. And it takes forever to get there. And so with any change, whether it's balancing a weapon or match length, whatever it is, our philosophy is if it's too short, let's make sure the next time we play it, it's actually too long. And then we'll get a sense of where do we need to meet in the middle. We do this even with art changes. I was talking to the environment team yesterday about some changes on a map, and I told him, hey, go too far to the point where it's like, this is annoying, and then dial it back. And I think that just really works well with design. So
Yeah, it definitely does. I work a lot with audio and VFX, and so there's a weapon that comes to mind, future power weapon, no names. But yeah, started off a little too. We didn't like the direction, so we just went and just buffed it up, and we found a good spot for it. So
yeah,
the way that we've
like,
been doing it is working well.
we'll say, hey, that audio, that gunshot sounds a little bit too weak. I want it to sound OP, and then let's meet in the middle. So
Awesome. I want to go ahead and move over to competitive versus casual gameplay, factions, abilities, equipment, and more. Want to take a bit of time to talk about some concerns that we've seen throughout the community, which is balancing casual versus competitive, and if there's a place for both sorts of gamers within our game.
yeah, well, I'll say so far, really all we've shown is the competitive side. I mean, you could argue TDM is kind of for both, right? Everybody loves TDM. But I'd say, the only modes we've shown so far are on the more competitive side. Like Hot Zone is meant to be one of our competitive modes. I think for balancing and testing, like uh, obviously we have a lot of goofy modes coming, but balance doesn't matter quite as much for a goofy mode as it does for a competitive mode. So right now, as we try to balance the factions, we're trying to balance them around the more competitive modes, and then focus on the fun, right? So for all the goofy modes, Splitgate had like low gravity, stuff like that. It doesn't really matter if in a low gravity mode, Sabrask versus Eros is a little bit more powerful than one or the other. So for kind of our factions, weapons, etc., we're trying to balance around competitive, and then for everything else, like our priority, even for competitive, our priority is fun. We like to say fun first. It's one of our pillars of game design, and so we even spell out, hey, we will prioritize fun over competitive integrity, over monetization, over whatever it is. We need to prioritize fun first, because that is our top goal: is make the most fun game possible.
Yeah, totally. And I think, you know, there are a lot of times where you can do things that help both groups or help one group and the other group just doesn't care. Like, I think when we were going through this pass that we were talking about, adding portals to maps, we have a lot of maps where it's like, if there was a floor portal here, are competitive players going to use that? A lot of times, probably not, because it's, floor portal, it's more fun based. It's not super like strong strategically necessarily, but it's fun. And adding in a lot more of that and trying to focus on that. Things where it's like, yeah, this is just a win for a casual player who just wants to have fun and create highlights and
Right.
have a good time, and it's not hurting competitive players at all. So that's kind of the the balance that we're looking to strike a lot of times, I think.
Totally. And that's why some of these portal walls we added, kind of the original mindset, like we didn't want to have portal walls that wouldn't be used. We weren't even thinking necessarily competitive. We were just thinking, this is kind of a niche portal wall. Do we really need it? And I think our mindset now is a little bit different, which is like, well, it's fun. If you're a really good player, maybe you don't use that portal wall because, you're just triple portaling all day. But for a lot of players, it's just an additional option. It's a fun thing. You can get momentum out of it. And so I think our mindset has definitely shifted a little bit after the alpha feedback. And the execution you'll see with both the existing maps and some of the new maps that we've gone and added some additional portal walls to.
Yeah, and just the direction for future maps as well. So, you at least some of the people that are watching have seen some of the changes that we made to the Alpha 1 maps where, we added a couple floor portals, a couple places you can get momentum, that kind of stuff, as well as other normal standard wall portals. But then we're doing that same process on future maps where it's like, okay, this map that nobody has played yet, like, how can we make this better with this feedback that we received on our existing maps, and then the maps we're creating from scratch right now, and we're creating new, from the ground up blockouts. Like, again, how can we use this feedback that we're receiving with the Alpha 1 maps and use that to improve our future content?
Yep.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, thanks for that, Derek. I believe in the future, one of our split streams are actually going to be about map and level design. So stay tuned for more in-depth explanations there. It's going to be a super fun time. Um, Wanted to talk a little bit about weapons. In our last external playtest we had on Saturday, attachments was a big talking point on why we added certain attachments, and we didn't want to, of course, overwhelm the players. And speaking on weapons, if you have not, actually the three of us, we did a breakdown of our favorite weapon and faction loadout. So if you guys have not seen that yet, it's on our Twitter, !Twitter. Go ahead and take a look. Just a couple posts down, quick 30-second tips. But yeah, I wanted to talk a bit about attachments because that is a big change coming from the first Splitgate and moving towards, again, like that faction style, you know, personalization sort of play. So why did we use certain attachments and, you know, only allow 2 rather than, you know, up to 5 like other games?
Yeah, well, I'll say a couple things. So one, definitely you should go look at Twitter because we didn't just show our favorites, but we also revealed a new gun. So
True.
Eros has a shotgun. It's an auto shotgun. It's one of my favorite guns in the game. I'll just say I'm a huge fan of the original Modern Warfare 2, and I just loved the AA-12. And I talk about it a little bit. I think my marketing team told me like, you shouldn't call out other games. I'm like, I don't care. I love Modern Warfare 2. But yeah, very similar to that like original AA-12 Modern Warfare 2 shotgun. Super fun. So in terms of attachments, I mean, again, like we wanted to have variety, but meaningful variety, right? And so what I'd say is if you look at you know, the direction that the previous game I just talked about has headed, there's a lot of attachments. And that's cool in some ways, right? It gives you a ton of variety, but when there's 50 different options, not only does it get overwhelming, but it also kind of forces you to make them extremely subtle, right? Every single attachment, it's like, is it even changing the way the weapon plays? And so I think with our goal of meaningful variety with a purpose, we said, hey, 5 attachments. Each of those attachments is a net positive. It's meaningful. It's impactful. It's actually going to change the gun in a meaningful way. And we're not going to overwhelm the user with 500 options. It's like, hey, here's 5 options. Pick 2, and they're going to give you a benefit. Yeah, so that was kind of our mindset there.
Yeah, I think it kind of touches on what we've talked about with meaningful variety with purpose, right? Where, you know, we use that pillar across a lot of parts of the game, but that's another one where it's like we want these attachments to actually make the gun feel different. And like if I want something to, you know, that plays into my play style of playing at longer range, like I think Jesse's loadout had a laser sight and extended barrel, where like
Correct.
now this assault rifle is a lot better fighting at long range, where normally an assault rifle is more of a medium range weapon. So, you know, that customization and being able to play to your strengths and your own play style and carve out your own niche, I think is a lot of the driving force there.
We'd rather have one grip that makes an impact than like 12 grips that are all slightly different flavors of the same thing.
Yeah, what I love about the attachments is we have a wide variety of maps in sizes. Talked about that in our external playtest as well. We introduced a new map, which is always exciting. So you guys will hopefully see more of that in the future. But yeah, I love being able to swap from a certain loadout to new attachments based on sizes. I think it's a really fun, refreshing time. You know, games don't feel so, you know, mundane because there's so many different aspects within our loadout system. I guess we'll go ahead and move right on into movement and regeneration mechanics. Obviously, you know, triple portaling is still a big factor for those who want to do that. We have, of course, introduced more ways to move around the map. We have some jump pads. We've added the ability to slide, and of course, you know, the Eros Rush, the well-loved ability. How are we planning on like refining these sorts of elements based off of feedback? We've made some already, but wanting to get your guys' ideas on, you know, not the weapons, the movement mechanics, and you know the differences between Splitgate and Splitgate 2.
Yeah. Well, I'll say kind of the biggest change we made after the alpha was we added the ability to sprint while reloading to all classes. That was surprisingly awesome. I will say, like adding that, I think at first we thought, oh, this is like a really subtle thing, and Eros is kind of the speedy class, so we'll just give it to Eros. Thank God we added it to all classes because it's not just that you can sprint while reloading. I mean, that's great and it feels faster and more fluid and responsive, but it's also the fact that you can reload while you slide. And it's not even something I even thought about. It was just kind of an unintended consequence of being able to now sprint while reloading. And it just feels so nice to get in that flow state of like, you're fighting, you're shooting, you're low on ammo, you're low on health, you're trying to run away because you got the first kill, you got to reload, you just slide down that hill. It just feels so fluid and so much better than ever. So I think that was like the biggest change. I think another thing, I actually don't even remember if this was alpha or not. I think maybe it was, but I know at some point you couldn't throw equipments or do abilities while shooting. I don't actually remember if that made it into the alpha or not. But now, our philosophy is like guns up always, right? So we want you to be able to shoot. We don't want to take away from that. And so with everything, whether I'm doing my hyper sight, throwing down a barrier wall, throwing a smoke grenade, shooting myself with a stim, I can shoot the entire time. And so I think it's just about making the game feel responsive, right? When I click a button, I want that button to immediately do what I think it's going to do. And so preventing blocking that is kind of what we're trying to go for. So it just feels more snappy.
Yeah, I think to answer what you aren't sure on, in alpha, you could shoot while doing abilities, but it didn't read very well. The animations weren't quite reflecting that.
Oh, yeah.
Just because it was still work in progress. And then for equipment, stim shot was the only one that you could shoot while using it. And that was something we got feedback on, is like stim shot just feels more fun than these other equipment because you can shoot while you're using it. So we're like, okay, maybe we should go back and
clarify, like a lot of it was just the visuals, if I recall now, which is like before, you'd do the hyper sight and your gun would go off to the side, right? And technically you could still shoot. It's just your gun's pointed that way, so you don't think you can shoot. Yeah. And so now we've updated the animation. The animation team's been doing amazing work, but now it's, I do this, my gun is still pointed at this. It's still, does a little bit, so it doesn't feel like you're stiff. But it's still pointed. I can still shoot while I'm doing that. I can still shoot while I'm doing that. Just to make it feel better and more consistent with player expectations.
Yeah. I think the other thing that I would say was like hugely impactful, more so than I thought, honestly, was wow, and there it goes, it's gone. No, the two things that we did, one was obviously reloading while sprinting, which was huge, and then the other was sprinting by default being an option. So we didn't have that in alpha. So there's a lot of people who don't like holding shift, and I think even on controller, it was kind of like sometimes you get taken out of sprint by something like reloading, and then switching that to now have the option where you just all the time, if I press W and I'm not blocked by something, I just sprint. Feels so much better, so much smoother. I think we even had it on by default in the most recent test that we did and got a lot of really positive feedback about that. Just feeling more smooth. Yeah.
I'm a hater of that, to be honest. You have the option. I turn it off because I am just, I don't know, I'm just used to holding shift forever, even though there's no point. But that's cool.
Yeah, another great bit of feedback that we adjusted, that was pretty popular in the community for giving that feedback, was being able to close one of your two portal walls, or portals rather than both. So we have made that adjustment as well for those who are very savvy with their portaling. That, of course, has been addressed. And as always, thank you for the feedback.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that one. And that's also optional. I think what we did is by default, like your default bindings is just one button to close both. But if you're the kind of person who wants to have two buttons mapped or have paddles on your controller, right, you have that optionality.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, I do think that we're probably going to go ahead and take a couple of questions from the chat. We do have a full-fledged Q&A tomorrow in our Discord. If you're not part of the Discord, please go ahead and throw down ~Discord, ~socials. If you want to be a bit more involved in the community, be sure to RSVP for that event in the Discord. Plenty of more time. Does that make sense? Plenty of time to address your questions. We're only going to be able to tackle a few today. So go ahead and feel free to ask some questions.
Tomorrow we're doing a bunch. So make sure if we don't get to your question today, come tomorrow is the point. Come to the Discord. Yeah, we'll answer a bunch of questions. And we're going to do a lot of this kind of stuff going forward. So
yeah, absolutely. So yeah, we'll go ahead and take a couple of questions now to Darek and Ian. Just go ahead and, pick and choose questions that you see that you think we want to talk about. And yeah, once again, tomorrow, a lot more questions going to be answered.
Darek, I'll let you drive this because I don't
All right,
even
let
have
me
the
pull it
stream up.
up.
So.
At Akuvo, at Jesse, how does it feel being the most handsome at 1047? Thank you, Machiavelli. Great question.
Thank you. That's a great question.
Yeah, how does it feel, Jesse, being the most handsome at 1047?
You know, I gotta say, it feels pretty amazing.
How much did you guys pay Machiavelli to ask
I
that?
know.
Enough, apparently.
Our marketing budget is gone. Sorry, team.
Yeah, sorry about that. I did see a good question. If we can close enemy portals. Yes, you can. We have shifted from the EMP grenades in Splitgate 1. You can now actually place your portal over an enemy portal. There is currently a time where you cannot. I believe it's 3 seconds right now. That is also, of course, being tested and worked on. So you will be able to replace enemy portals with the click of a button and instantly, rather than lobbing a grenade and having to wait for that grenade to travel. So super fun.
Yeah, I can
change.
just add to that a little bit too. There's a number of things we did to make portals just feel better. And so part of it was removing the EMP grenades. That was another one. Some people loved them, some people hated them. But in general, we want every button that you press to feel very snappy, responsive, and just fun. And it doesn't feel that fun to throw an EMP grenade at a wall only for the player to then immediately spawn another portal right there. And so the thinking was, we just want you to be able to point and click and have it feel responsive. There's an enemy portal there. You just shoot it and it's deleted. But your portal is invulnerable for a few seconds so that you don't get into this just battle of spamming portal against a portal wall to try to camp and block them when you only have a limited resource of your EMP grenades. The other thing we did, there's actually, I guess, a number of changes we made to make portals feel better. So one of them is client-side portals. And so I don't fully understand the technical details here, but I know there's a lot of fancy iris replication, Unreal Engine 5 voodoo that we do that basically makes portals just way more responsive, especially at high ping. You know, if you're sitting next to the server, it's not going to make a huge difference. But if you're at 50 ping even, spawning a portal, there's just that slight delay, which especially if you're into triple portaling or you're trying to do last second things in Splitgate 1, very difficult to do. And it could be the difference between life and death. In Splitgate 2, it's just like how it feels in race mode, where you just click that button and it spawns instantly and you can just move the way you want to. And then the last thing we did is just portal nudging. And so really nice change because, you know, there's no worse feeling than having just not, you know, there's just not quite enough room on that portal wall because your teammate's portal is right there and you need one more inch and you spawn it and it just doesn't spawn. And so one of our engineers, Ben Rockland, who many of you probably know, Finest Ben, but implemented the ability to just nudge a teammate's portal, right? So if I spawn a portal and there's just a few inches, not enough room, it'll just subtly move my teammate's portal a few inches to the right or left to make room. And so there's a lot of little things like that we've done to just make it feel better that you'll especially notice. You kind of go back and forth between Splitgate 1 and 2, you'll notice the difference.
Yeah, I think portal snapping is another one of those where in Splitgate it's something we saw all the time, especially among newer players, where they'll place a portal, try to walk through it, and they'll stub their toe and just get stuck right about to walk through it. So now we do something where it's like, okay, if it's within a certain radius of just being on the floor, let's just put it on the floor.
Yeah, if it's like a foot off the ground, just snap it to the ground. And I think we have the option to turn that off. So if you're a pro player and you're just like, I don't want it to snap to the ground, I want it to be 6 inches off, you can do that. But yeah, for most players, yeah.
Yeah, and to talk on the client-side portals, something I've seen a few times now is obviously in the alpha, because it's such a limited playtest, we don't have all of our servers up. You know, in the future, we'll have a lot more regions that you can play in, so you can play on your local server and get the best connection possible. But in the alpha, we didn't have Australia servers, so the best servers for someone in Australia was playing on West Coast, which is like 200 milliseconds of ping, which is a lot. And I saw several people where I would tell them that they were playing on 200 milliseconds of ping, and they were like, wait, what? Like, I thought I was playing on Australia servers. Like, that felt as good as playing any other shooter when I'm playing on my own server, which I think really shows, like, the amount of work that we've put into trying to make it feel good for everybody, whether it be somebody who has worse internet or, somebody playing on a server that with their friends that are across, maybe I'm on West Coast and I want to play with my friends on the East Coast. Just making that feel as good as possible to open up people to play with their friends. And
yeah, and it's not just portals. I mean, it's everything in the game. It's just that there's so much network optimizations we've done in Splitgate 2 that it just feels really, really responsive and snappy. And I mean, even on the hardware side, there's still more improvements to come, of course. But we've done a lot to optimize this thing, but especially on networking.
Another question I saw from Code Phoenix. What were the changes you guys made for the TTK? Like, what weapons and stats did you guys change? This question was quite a while ago. There's not a huge stream delay. I just highlighted it and saved it while we were talking to clarify.
I'll let you tackle it.
Yeah. So basically, weapon balance is kind of the thing I spend a lot of my time doing. Adjusting stuff, trying to make it all feel balanced. So just so you guys know, if anything's ever OP, you know who to yell at and who to blame. It's my fault. So kind of the process of going from alpha to now was, we again heard a lot of feedback about Splitgate time to kill felt better. I wish it was like Splitgate. So it was like, okay. And the original alpha was basically balanced around the Splitgate assault rifle. So a little bit faster time to kill, had to buff up the Splitgate carbine, buff up things to match that Splitgate assault rifle, which was a bit stronger.
You're saying originally, not now.
Yeah,
That's
so that
what
was
we
originally what we did.
Yeah.
And whenever we moved, into now and the playtest that we did recently with a few of you guys, we basically said, okay, I think the Splitgate carbine is actually more what we want to be balancing around, not the Splitgate assault rifle. Let's move to the Splitgate carbine. So the Arrows carbine basically just said the Arrows carbine is going to be exactly the Splitgate carbine, and then let's balance everything else around that. So the question was like, what weapons and values did you change? We changed every value on every weapon. Basically went through and adjusted everything to be, okay, what would this look like if it was balanced with the Arrows carbine being the Splitgate carbine. So yeah, changed a ton of stuff. Also made a huge pass on weapon drop off just to make it feel more intuitive and more, consistent across all weapons. Also, impacts stuff like attachments a lot. So I don't want to dive too deep. I could talk for hours about the changes we made and kind of my philosophy on weapon balance and equipment balance and faction balance. Like faction balance was definitely a big one that we've taken a lot of passes at, with Eris being
TLDR though is
TLDR though
is now virtually the same as Splitgate 1's time to kill.
Yep.
Which is longer than the alpha.
Yep.
All right. Well, I think we are probably going to go ahead and call this time. Darek and Ian, thank you guys again for the time that you've taken out of the day. Very busy time over at 1047, of course, so it's appreciated. I know the community appreciates it. Once more, chat, as the big streamers like to say. We do have, once again, a Q&A tomorrow at Friday, 3 p.m. Pacific time. Again, ! Discord to go ahead and hop in there. Wishlist the game on Steam, of course, so we know that you're excited to hop in the server. And trust me, if you haven't gotten to play yet, we are just as excited for you to check it out as you are to play it. So once again, thank you all so much for your time, and we will see you all tomorrow.
Thank you, Jesse. And thanks everybody for tuning in. We're going to be doing a lot more of this kind of stuff in the near future, and we'll see you tomorrow.